Welcome to Complexity Made Simple. My name is Paul Allen, and before we get into today's video, well, I'm just going to remind you the 3 books that are on sale. Drink tea and read the paper. If you're a green belt and a black belt and you want simple instruction on how to apply your skill, design of experiments for 21st century engineers, and finally, a statistical process control for small batch production. They are all available from lulu.com and the links are in the video below. Welcome to the latest video. A few weeks ago I recommended a YouTube channel by a gentleman called Tom Mentink, and I was saying to everyone, you know, go and listen to Tom. Look at other YouTube channels, read books, learn. And one of the things I did was I subscribed to Tom's channel in order to do just that. And Tom came up with a video a few days ago which kind of sparked my interest in control of your process. How to make sure your standards are in great shape, and maybe also how to problem solve so that you can maybe re-standardize. You can spot the error or the limitation of your current control methods. So Tom came up with 5 questions. So really what this is about is how to confirm your standards work. Okay, or how to confirm your standards are going to work. Now Tom came up with 5 questions. So method 1, you can use Tom's 5 questions. We'll have a look at those 5 questions in a minute. I'm going to call them 3 rules. I have 3 rules about my standards, which I'm going to share with you, and I'm also going to share a technique that I learned at Sony, which is called window analysis. And I think this is a great example of how you pick your weapon of choice. What do you feel comfortable with? What works for you? What can you teach to other people? I mean, you know, I quite like window analysis, but do I use it? I tend not to, because I use these 3 rules and I've become comfortable with that, and my clients like to use that. But there's nothing wrong with the 5 questions. They do something slightly different to what those 3 rules do. I would say these 2 maybe are more similar. This is a bit more technical, this is a bit simpler, but anyway, we're just going to go through these 3 techniques and you could pick your weapon of choice. So the first one I'm going to look at Tom Mentink's 5 questions, because he came up with this video a few days ago and I went, okay, that's really good. So let's look. So you can see here, here's Tom delivering the video, and I would recommend that you go and watch the video for yourself. So here he is, and you can see on his flip chart, you can see the 5 questions on the flip chart. Now what these 5 questions are designed to do isn't just to make sure that you've got a good standard, but that you're applying it in a good and easy to use way, because just writing documents doesn't mean that you control the process. You have to get the information to the point of activity and make it easy to read and see every day. So here's his 5 questions. So his first one is about the definition of a standard. In other words, do you have one? So we've got the definition of a standard. Then it says, is it easy to follow? So, you know, do people understand it? Does it actually make sense? Or is it a little bit woolly and open to interpretation? Then is it easy to meet the standard? So, you know, sometimes we ask what looks like a very simple request, but when you actually try to apply the standard yourself, for whatever reason, maybe the equipment lets you down, or maybe you don't have the measurement system available, or whatever it happens to be, or you don't have the time, maybe. Is it easy to meet the standard? Then is it easy to detect that there's been a deviation from the standard? And finally, is it easy to restore the standard? Now, what all of these things are doing isn't just about saying, okay, you've written something that everybody can understand. Now, have you put it at the point of activity? Have you visualized its status so that if you are violating the standard, everybody can see that? Yeah, so the detectability of the deviation. This is about using great tools like 5S and visual management, for example. So there are the 5 questions which Tom is recommending that you apply even before you switch your process on, so that you know you're going to go live defect free, or as good as you can possibly be. Okay, so that's almost an upfront assessment of your quality standard. Okay, so there are the 5 questions. So there are the 5 questions. I've never seen those before. I think they're 5 really great questions. And the idea is to try and make sure you go live defect free, which is excellent. I think we don't do enough of that. You know, this would be linked to your FMEA work, for example. So 5 questions to go live defect free. Then I can show you my 3 rules. So my 3 rules go like this. So when we're trying to decide whether you have control of a particular variable, my 3 rules are this. Similar to Tom's. First one: do you have a standard operating procedure? Okay, so do you actually have a rule? The second one is, are you happy with it? Now this is similar to Tom's question about, is it easy to follow, etc. Is it easy to understand and easy to follow? So are you happy with it? So sometimes, and you know, you go and read your own standards, but some SLPs, they will say the technician adjusts the machine until he gets a good quality result. What do you think of that as a standard? It is bloody awful. Okay, so are you happy with it? Now, what I mean by are you happy with it, the phrase I would use, it is clear and unambiguous. Okay, that's what a quality standard should be: clear and unambiguous. So if we're talking about machine settings, if it says that the speed is 30, that's exactly what it says. It does not say that the speed is 30 plus or minus 2, or the speed is 30 plus or minus 5. That is not clear and unambiguous. That is leaving it to the skill of the technician. It's no control at all. Guy can come up, put it anywhere he wants within that window. Yeah, and bear in mind, what's that plus or minus thing trying to do? You're trying to give him a window where nothing's supposed to happen, because that's what control means. Nothing is supposed to be changing. So if you've given him a window and it's nice and tight anyway, but when he adjusts it within the window, nothing should happen, because that's what tolerances are supposed to do. Nothing should happen. But anyway, are you happy with it? Is it clear and unambiguous? Read your own standards. They often say nothing. They leave it to the skill of the person. And finally, do you use the standard? So do you have a standard operating procedure? Are you happy with it? And do you use it? And they're my 3 questions that I'm using to decide whether a standard operating procedure is in place. What I'm basically trying to ascertain is, do you have control? Control means stable and predictable. Do you have control? Okay, and they're my 3 questions for any control rule that you're applying on your process. Now, usually this is an after the fact assessment. We're looking at a process that's already producing defects, it's producing problems, and then what we go in and we're using those 3 rules to diagnose where your weaknesses are. Do you have a standard operating procedure? Are you happy with it? And do you use it? Now, they're the 3 rules that I like to use. It's partly because I'm diagnosing problems. They're very easy to use. All of my clients, whatever level of technical education they've got, whether they're an operator, whether they're a technician, or whether they're an engineer, or whether they've got a PhD, it doesn't matter. Everybody can apply those 3 rules really simply, and that's why I like it. They're my 3 rules for assessing control, standard operating procedures and control. And finally, the last one, a little bit more technical. This is one I learned when I was at Sony, and it was something called window analysis. All right, now the reason it was called window analysis is because what they do is they give you a little table. We're going to have a look at it in a second, and you've sort of got 2 levels. I think you've got the technical aspect and you've got the production aspect, because of course the technical aspect, those people typically are going to set the standard operating procedure. These people are going to apply the standard operating procedure, and what you end up with is a grid, and you end up with mistakes, and you go within this window here, and this window is telling us to take this action. Yeah, so there's a window that you go through, and then because you're making a particular error, there's a particular action to take to try and correct the error, and that's why it's called window analysis. So let's take a look at the little matrix, and let's have a look at the individual windows through which you could travel. So here we are. Look, the top table here is the window that we're interested in, and you can see that we've got different categories: category A, category B, category C, category D. We've got the 2 parties. In other words, you've got the technical authority at the top, and then you've got the production authority down this left hand side. And you can see that what we're asking the question is the standard operating procedure known to the technical authority? Is it known or is it unknown? In other words, do you have an SOP at all? Then once you've got the SOP, is it practiced by the technical authority or not practiced by the technical authority? Okay, clearly if you've got a standard operating procedure and the technical authority doesn't practice it, well, it's not much point having the standard operating procedure. So that's the technical authority at the top, and then down the side we've got the production authority. Do they know the standard operating procedure? Is it practiced or not practiced? Is it completely unknown? So just working backwards a second, if the standard operating procedure is clearly unknown to the technical department, it is clearly unknown to the production department, well, clearly the answer there is you need to write a standard operating procedure. We just don't have a standard operating procedure. So that window is very straightforward. But let's look at the other categories. So if what you've got is window A there, both parties know the standard, both parties practice the standard. Well, and then what it says, look, you've got an established method by both parties, but it's unsuitable because we're still getting defects. So what that's telling you is your control method isn't good enough. Why don't we come up with a new way of controlling it? All right, so we're trying to get away here from blaming the person. You know, too often we try to blame the operator when actually there's an error in our process somewhere. So window A is everybody's practicing the standard operating procedure, everybody's happy with the standard operating procedure, but it just doesn't work, doesn't make the process defect free. Come up with a new way of doing it. Then we jump on a little table here, we jump then to category C. So C here, look, is down the bottom. So essentially, the standard operating procedure is known by the technical department, but it is unknown by the production department. So it says, look, communicate the established method effectively to all parties concerned, including new people. So that's pretty much, and it doesn't matter whether it's production on its own or production and the technical department on its own. For whatever reason, the standard is unknown at the point of activity. Communicate it out. Now, if you look at some of Tom's questions about is it easy to apply and is it communicated and things like that, he's trying to make sure that you never go through the C window with some of the questions. Yeah, so again, this is a technique after you've had problems. Tom's technique is trying to make sure that you don't get the problems in the first place. So there's window C, and then finally, window B, what does it say? The established method has been standardized and effectively communicated to all parties concerned. One party does not follow the standard, however, and creates a defect. So now we have a standard, it's known, so we're in this part of the table, both parties know it, but unfortunately the production department and the QA department are not practicing the standard, and that creates a defect. Yeah, so what does it say? It says, well, apply a 5 why questioning technique to establish the true reason for non-adherence. Deal effectively with a continual non-adherence. So, you know, one of the things I'd be looking at there, for instance, can we mistake proof this? Yeah, so, you know, when I was at Sony, so we used this window analysis, you know, quite a lot. Putting the remote control in the box. We would always forget to put a remote control in the box with the TV. You know, it's a standard that the last thing that the packing operator does is to put a remote control in the box and then seal the box. We would forget, we would leave the commander out, the remote control out quite often. So we mistake proofed it. So there was a little button that had to be activated by the packing operator. The button could only be activated when the commander was in their hand, so we at least knew they'd picked a remote control up to put it in the box. To be fair, it didn't always work, but what we didn't do is blame the operator. You know, what you've got to try and do here is look at the process, and the window analysis is trying to get you to look at the process. Which window are you going through? Is it A, B, C or D? And what action is required to make your process control better than it currently is? Okay, so that was window analysis. So there's your 3 techniques. You know, these 2 techniques are really after the fact. You've put a control in and it's not working, you're making defects. So these 2 techniques are really after the fact. The 5 questions are trying to make you go live defect free. Doesn't always work, by the way. FMEA is trying to make you go live defect free. It doesn't always work, but if you can get 95% of your problems nailed before you go live, then hopefully you go live in a reasonably controlled way, and then you've just got a few last little details to nail down to make your production go fantastically day after day. So how to confirm that your standards are going to work. 5 questions, 3 rules, or window analysis. Pick your weapon of choice and make sure that you make more money.